Yeah, click off the power word shield, apply another one, and just get an insta 100k shield when I only have 163k health. Yeah, disc is interesting. You might look at the power of that absorb shield and think, hey, disc looks great in beta. And there's definitely an argument to be made that it is great in beta numerically, but I don't think it is in a good spot from a gameplay perspective. And I guess we'll go into why. Now, early on in beta, when I first got invited, I was singing Disc's praises because it was the spec that I tried first. And all I was really doing was comparing Dragonflight Disc to Shadowlands Disc. And make no mistake, Dragonflight Discipline Priest is significantly more powerful than the Shadowlands version, in my opinion, at least in dungeons especially. However, Disc suffers kind of the opposite problem that Holy Priest has, where Holy Priest has to pick and choose between what talents it wants to decide how it heals or what it focuses on. Disc has the opposite problem, in which so much power comes from a few talents. They aren't really options. The big caveat here is that tuning might change all of this, and I hope it does, but we'll have to see. I'll go into more detail with talents later on, but at the moment, the most egregious outlier offenders is harsh discipline, in my opinion, is mandatory in all content. And I would also say that Aegis of Wrath is just, you have to take it. Power Word Shield is so numerically strong. There are so many other talents that buff it. It's got a very short cooldown. It does a lot of healing. It applies your atonement. It's good in every way. And Aegis of Wrath just makes it significantly better. Now, since the Legion rework of Discipline, I would say, or I would characterize the spec as juggling two fundamental elements of gameplay. The first is your atonement application and direct heals. In the past, that was like Shadowmend and Power Word Shield, and now it's Power Word Shield, Renew, and Flash Heal, and then Prayer of Mending thrown in as well, even though it doesn't apply Atonement. And the other element you're juggling with that is dealing damage to heal through Atonement. Now, during early beta, I thought that the Atonement element of the spec had gained significantly more power than the direct heal element, but then this Aegis of Wrath powered shield talent got changed from 30% to 50%, and a few talents got moved around, which further buffed Power Word Shield. And I was hoping that the icing on the cake to this direct heal atonement application element of Disc would be that Shadow Covenant was going to get buffed or changed so that it was a cooldown that made your direct casted healing significantly stronger when you found yourself in situations where healing through just atonement wasn't enough. Now, this only really applies to Mythic Plus, I would say, and PvP, because in Raid, Atonement is how you heal. And for mechanics that require significant spot healing or sustained single target healing or something like that, then other healers can pick up the slack in that area. And Disc's main role in Raid is to spread their atonements, get their big ramps going, and heal primarily through atonement. Now, instead of Shadow Covenant getting buffed or altered to better fill this role, instead we got Shadowmend removed. So, not ideal. And I think the removal of Shadowmend has really made some like second order thinking miscalculations from Blizzard's part very evident. Like, it's created almost more problems removing it than it's supposedly fixed by taking it away. I think the result of this is Discipline has become a spec that feels much clunkier when atonement healing, even though it's probably more powerful. And when it's not atonement healing, I think, again, it's more of a clunky playstyle. There are too many buttons, which is funny because this is the exact problem that Blizzard said they were trying to solve by taking Shadowmend away, in that Disc has button bloat. There are too many things you want to do at the same time. Now, the whole spec feels kind of like it's on a bit of a knife's edge at the moment, mainly because it's lopsided. It doesn't feel balanced. You have a lot more options and more powerful options and combinations for your atonement healing, your ramp healing in Raid, healing your party via atonement, but your options to heal people without atonement is basically Power Word Shield, and that's it. It's so incredibly strong at the moment that you have to press it on cooldown, no matter what, all the time. If you're in the middle of trying to deal damage to get your atonement ramp in, you're probably going to stop doing that to press Power Word Shield. Whether or not you can quickly spot heal someone or stop someone from dying who's taking a lot of damage is entirely down to whether or not Power Word Shield is on cooldown. And the I guess clunkiness of having to press Power Word Shield on cooldown all the time is kind of exacerbated by Penance basically being the same thing. Harsh Words in particular, the extra bolt of Penance, the Power of the Dark Side proc, and Harsh Words in particular mean that you're pressing Penance on cooldown all the time, no matter what. So Disc has become a spec that kind of has lost, I would say, a lot of its depth, because all you're really doing, like, I mean, you're pressing a lot of buttons, but 80%, I'm just ballparking a figure here, a significant portion of your power and what you can do as a discipline priest is really just pressing Power Word Shield on cooldown and pressing Penance on cooldown. The rest of what you do almost feels like it doesn't matter too much, and any situation that doesn't favor those two spells, Disc is going to struggle with. Another tangential problem with Penance is that because, like I said, Harsh Words in particular has made Penance so strong that taking Contrition or even really thinking about using Penance defensively is almost always the wrong choice. It's a noob trap at the moment. Even in a 5-man party, if you just keep Atonement on 2, 3, 5 targets, you can have Harsh Discipline up for every single Penance. Because you can see now they've added the counter. So every time you tick with anything on as Atonement healing on any target, you gain a stack of Harsh Discipline. But what happens is that Harsh Discipline gives your Penance with Castigation 7 bolts, and the 7 bolts from your Harsh Discipline Penance count towards the next Penance. So with maybe 1 or 2 Purge the Wickeds ticking and Atonement on a couple of people, you can back-to-back have the Harsh Discipline buff up for your every single Penance, which again means that if you stop doing that, if you break that cycle and you lose Harsh Discipline by using a defensive Penance, you lose a lot of power. And that, we're also not even really including the fact that Contrition has just always been horribly balanced. It's been numerically weak since like Legion 7.0. Now, like I said, Discipline is still very numerically strong. Your Atonement application feels better than it has in the past, even with Power Word Shield being on a cooldown now, a very short cooldown. You get quite a lot, if you play Surge of Light from the class tree, you get quite a lot of Flash of Light procs. Renew is useful and feels like a good button to press. The talent to reduce the cooldown on Radiance feels great. I guess so now it's probably a good time to go through the talents. There's quite a lot of good things to say about what Discipline has gained. It's unfortunate that everything it's gained is really overshadowed by 2 buttons, Power Word Shield and Penance. If you are happy pressing these buttons, and really most of what you do coming down to pressing these buttons, then Disc could be really fun. If you want to make more decisions when you play, more moment-by-moment decisions, then Disc probably isn't going to feel great. But I will say, in almost every facet of Discipline that you can think of, it is significantly better in Dragonflight than it was in Shadowlands. It's now possible to take Angelic Feather and Body and Soul, which feels fantastic. Getting healed back after you take a critical strike, really strong. There's a lot of really good talents here. Throes of Pain almost single-handedly fixes any mana problems this could have in in dungeons, at least as far as we can see at the moment. Having Divine Star and Surge of Light and Prayer of Mending and Shadow Fiend and Double Shadow Word Death and Mind Games and everything, it feels really good. And the faster casting on Smite pretty much all the time. It's great. There's a lot of good things to say here about the class tree. I'm doing a video on Dominate Mind because this talent at the moment is kind of crazy as well. I don't see it staying that way, so I'm not going to go into too much detail at the moment. Just know that you can now basically have a permanent minion or pet as a priest with Dominate Mind, as long as they're humanoid, as long as they're demonic, mechanical, or undead. And a lot of these mobs in dungeons have crazy strong powers. But anyway, also having PI and twins, the class tree feels great. The only real criticism I have of the class tree is that Void Shift and Angelic Bulwark both feel like PvP talents, and especially Angelic Bulwark, for whatever reason, it's a capstone talent for priests that's worse than like Resto Shaman's talent. It basically does the same thing that's further up on the tree. So having a defensive that's very weak, even though it's a capstone, feels bad. But other than that, the class tree I'm quite happy with. The spec tree as well, there's a lot of powerful nodes on there. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the problem I have is that Harsh Discipline feels mandatory. Aegis of Wrath feels mandatory, which means you really don't have that many options. Twilight Equilibrium, I think, is a fantastic addition to the spec, and I was really happy playing around with that before Shadowmend got removed. Can't even stay logged into the game right now. The shuffling around they've done in recent builds, like moving lenience up, feels quite good. Like I said, the real issue I have is that I feel like Harsh Discipline is so strong that having to drop Aegis of Wrath to take Light's Wrath or the Mindbender nodes doesn't ever really feel like a good choice to me, because even though I've been ranting on about how powerful Power Word Shield is for a while now, if you dropped these nodes, these 4 nodes, your Power Word Shield would probably be weak enough that the lopsided balance of your Atonement applicators and direct heals would get so much weaker that the entire spec would just hinge on Atonement. And this is probably going to be my final take on Disc at the moment, is that because of the change to Renew, Prayer of Mending, and a lot of the goodies in the class tree, and Flash Heal, the removal of Shadowmend, the non-viability for whatever reason still of Shadow Covenant, it really feels like a lot's going to have to change to make Discipline, at least from my opinion, to make it quite good at the moment. Basically means that if Atonement isn't very strong, and if the Aegis of Wrath node, for example, isn't extremely strong, then Discipline is just going to feel like a worse version of Holy Priest. Because so many of all of their class utility is the same, and so many of their normal gameplay loop spells, Flash Heal, Renew, Prayer Mending, is the same as Holy, that if Atonement isn't very powerful and Power Word Shield isn't very strong, Disc is just going to feel like a Holy Priest light. Like you've given up half of your toolkits and all your holy words and things to basically get Atonement. So it better be good. And at the moment, it is good. And I guess the conclusion here is that at the moment, Atonement healing is good, but it isn't good in a fun way or a good way. It's basically propped up by 1 or 2 talents on the tree, on the spec tree, and there isn't much decision making or thought that really goes into it. Looks like the servers are dying or struggling at the moment, so I guess I will leave this video here for now by saying that harsh words making defensive penance and noob trap isn't good. Shielding someone for half of their health on a non-crit or almost their entire health bar on a critical strike with a spell that's on a 6-second cooldown, buffed by another spell on a 9-second cooldown, isn't healthy for the game. Having to use Power Word Shield on cooldown no matter what it disrupts, like Disc's damage ramp, isn't good for the spec. Having so much power tied to 2 spells only isn't great for the spec. I also have no idea how this thing's going to play out in Raid. I can almost see situations in which, unless you have all of your cooldowns to use for Atonement and your double Radiance charges, doing any Atonement healing at all really probably isn't going to be relevant or worth it. You're probably just going to spam Renew, Renew, Power Word Shield, Renew, Renew, Power Word Shield, Renew, Renew, Power Word Shield, and then every 40 to 50 seconds when both of your Radiance charges are up and you can schisms into Mind Games, into juiced up Penance and everything like that, then you'll Atonement heal, which I guess isn't too far off the ramp raid healing style Disc has now, but it's even more constrained. There's even less moment-to-moment decision making. But I will say the one nice part about this patch is the priest tier set looks great. But anyway, algorithm stuff. Thanks.